This is Seth Perry from St. Mark's Lutheran Church in Kingston, Ontario. Today's topic will cover rural ministry and COVID-19. We'll be talking to a few pastors and one council member. We'll be speaking with Karen Stepko from Christ Lutheran Church in Rhine, Saskatchewan, Pastor Sarah Mowat from Redeemer Lutheran Church and St. Paul's Anglican in a shared ministry in Biggar, Saskatchewan, Emmanuel Aristide from St. John's in Shellbrook and Zion Lutheran in Canwood, Lena Jensen from Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Wado, Ontario, Grace Lutheran in Rankin, and St. Peter's in Alice, Ontario, and also a council member, Gail Schreier from Grace Lutheran. I hope you enjoy. All right, so first question that I want to talk about is why rural ministry is different than suburban or urban ministry.
I noticed that in small towns, families are tighter and closer together, so they work really well together. And when you have church anniversaries, like the kids and grandkids that live all around the place all come back to their hometown and celebrate together. When you have a funeral, sometimes half of the town is shut down because someone important died and everyone attends. When you have a whole restaurant that shuts down because they knew the person who died, because the person used to go there and eat there, that's something incredible.
I grew up in kind of a small village myself, and there was one minister in town, and whether you went to church or not, he was kind of the town minister. Well, that's the situation I find myself in now in this community, where there is one church and one pastor, and I am it. So a lot of the life of the community revolves around the church, and a lot of the other activities of the community, I kind of almost feel like I'm doing a lot of PR work almost. By attending these activities, I'm the church visible in the community. And how I relate to people, I become the public face of that church. And even the people who don't go to church kind of embrace me as the local minister, someone to turn to for answers. And so in a situation like this, pandemic, I found that I almost kind of had to be the voice of what would the church say about this for more people than just the congregation.
I concur with what Karen said. I mean, we have three ministers in this town. We have me, which is Anglican Lutheran. We have a Catholic priest who's a great ecumenical partner, and then we have an evangelical guy. And so basically the evangelicals go to him for their things, and the Catholics go to the Catholic guy, and then everybody else comes to me. I don't have any colleagues close by. My closest colleague is at least an hour by driving.
So this pandemic, these shutdowns have been a challenge to let people know. So phone calls, there's a saying, the phone lines are burning or something. It's a Finnish saying when people are all on the phone. It might be an English saying too, but my phone lines are red hot because I'm trying to phone people and I leave messages to make sure that they know that I'm thinking and praying for them.
Being in the rural area, because most of our parishioners are senior, we've also got, the seniors don't really have access to internet. Like my parents are 92 and 88, and they're not interested in listening to a service over the internet, which would be wonderful if we could, set that up.
What's the number one growing edge or challenge that you have faced in your context while shifting to digital?
We're not doing online services. I don't expect we will be doing online services at all. I've been sort of directing them to, if they want to actually do watch a service, I've been directing them to people who are quality sermons in the ELCIC, and the Anglican bishop in our diocese has been doing evening prayer, morning prayer type stuff. So directing people to different resources that are already being live streamed in quality time. My concern, I guess, about putting so much information online is that we exclude people, and I think that's a problem. I'm excluding a third of my congregation if I go digital.
The video quality, I just use my cell phone, and sometimes it kind of blurs and then comes back, and then it blurs, comes back, because I don't have a fancy camera that can actually broadcast something really in a really nice way. And sometimes the internet speed can be detrimental to that as well when you live stream it. So in a rural congregation, that can be kind of negative.
It's just difficult. I mean, the young people possibly would be interested on going online, but like I said, we have a great majority that are seniors who do not have access to internet or a computer or even a cell phone.
One of my big challenges is the fact that I've got people ranging from 102 down to, children and babies, right? So I have to communicate already with people in a whole variety of ways to attempt to meet them where they're at. My congregation has a long tradition of when a person in the community passes away, we ring the church bells and we toll out the hammer for every year they were alive. So if a person was 80, we ring out 80 rings. And then, so that happens still. And then I post on Facebook who died. So I find that I'm putting up posters at the post office and I'm using social media, and some people want a landline phone call and some people want a text. So it kind of keeps me hopping all the time to try to meet different people at their different levels. And I had some of the same struggles that Sarah mentioned, where, by putting things online, I'm excluding some of the people in my community. In fact, my council said that they didn't expect me to put on any kind of an online video sermon at all. And because in some ways it would be reinventing the wheel. I've been leading people to the ELCIC resources for live stream worship, but I didn't have the volunteers and the capacity to put on a whole worship service. I'm the church secretary also. I'm the one and only employee. So even to shoot myself doing something, it had to be more minimal. But because I am the only minister in the community, I really did feel like I had something to say and that people wanted to hear me say it. I've received a lot of feedback saying that when I made those videos that I have made, that hearing a message from your own pastor really meant a lot. And it has touched people in the community who wouldn't normally come to a Sunday service, but I still notice that gap there, very large gap of people who weren't being accessed. So the local Christian radio station offered me a half an hour free of charge on Sunday afternoon to put on my service as well. So now I'm again doing a little video for one group, doing a little radio program for another group, trying to cover all the bases all on my own. But I know when I first came to the community, they had considered internet to be kind of a recreational luxury. They didn't think of it as something you use for your work or necessity to be able to connect with colleagues or get your job done. And at our very first council meeting, I said, well, I wanted to start us a church Facebook group. And that was 7 years ago. And my council chair said, oh, you're bringing us into the 20th century, are you? And I thought, this is the 21st century. But yes, and I mean, that really took off in a way that people didn't expect, right? And we have that's our main thing, but our church didn't have a website or anything like that. So in some ways we've always been playing catch up, but now this has really given me a large learning curve.
The ELCIC, like our member churches, like there's some real good postings on Sundays, and I just keep putting those links on Facebook because they're wonderful services. And why reinvent the wheel when you're getting a good quality service? Seth, you have one. Chris has. Like I think I go to at least 6 services on Sunday morning, and so the resources are wonderful that are coming out from the church. And I've shared that list with our people on our in our newsletter, and but that, like I'm thinking we're almost like it. I would be happy to do a TV thing because it just dawned on me, like the elderly do watch TV, and if they knew they could get on their local community channel, maybe that's what I should be doing.
What do you think would happen if there was an economic downturn in your rural community? So what would that look like?
The concern I've heard from some people is seeding is coming up soon, and seeding and harvest are 2 big times in Saskatchewan. And there are people who are concerned that farmers or farm workers are going to get sick and they won't be able to seed or seed early enough or enough of it, of their land. And also last year, the crop was really getting the crop off, which is harvest. I've got farmers who's got like an incredible amount, like 30-40% of their crop is still in the field. So they have to get that off. And so I think people are really concerned with the health of these workers because they need them to be in optimum health to make the money, right? And it's just, people are concerned about that, that people are going to get sick and they won't be able to work the farms. And that will be crippling for some farmers who are on the edge as it is.
But I think it's going to be quite drastic being rural. I think these people are good at being thrifty and careful and conscientious. Now, the seniors obviously are on pensions and things, but they are also very, they have large families and they're connected. So if the next generation is out of work and out of jobs I think the churches will suffer because the families will redirect their resources to their own families because it's the young families that are working, i.e. now they're out of work, right?
I talked to a couple last night. They have a beef cattle operation, and during the month of March, it's calving season. They pretty much are on the farm almost all the time, keeping to themselves anyway. So in that way, haven't seen that much of a difference in their way of life. And he told me that actually in the last 10 days, beef cattle prices have risen because of the demand, I think, for people buying up resources for this time of being isolated, storing up some food. And there'll always be that demand for food. So I know I was somewhat encouraged by Prime Minister Trudeau saying that he's going to put more money into Farm Credit Canada. And I think in terms of the grain farming, it just remains to be seen, right? If we can get some good weather, people can get out in the field, they will be able to seed their crop, and gas prices are low and things like that. Things might be in our favor as long as prices remain good, and then you can actually move your product, because that would depend on other people if they have the money to spend and things like that. Definitely the demand is there. But seeding is a very time-sensitive thing.
So yeah, we have a lot of these local businesses that are suffering right now, and a lot of families. And actually, my town is 30 minutes west of Prince Albert. So it's mostly like a bedroom community to the city of Prince Albert. So a lot of people go to Prince Albert for work, and then they go back to Shelburne to that's where they live. And some of the businesses there as well started to lay off some people. So there's a lot of stress on that, but so far from our farmers, they don't feel the stress yet. They're thinking of going seeding and stuff, and all of my parishioners who are farmers actually had a fairly good harvest. So they finished everything right on time, and it took them a little while to get everything off the ground, but it was a good year. So when it comes to that matter, they're not so worried yet. They're just worried around harvest because sometimes they hire some people from abroad who may not be able to come, and then they need to find some people local. I'm sure they will find a lot of people that might be willing to go harvesting with them because they're looking for jobs. So that can hopefully allow some families to put some food on their tables. But how many of them will be able to be hired? That's the question. And some of our ranchers are, like what Karen said, now is calving season, so we don't hear from them. They're busy. And so far, because of the demand is high right now, so they're smiling because this is good for them. But I'm mostly worried for the families who are not involved in farming, families that are involved with all kinds of other industries. And some of our teachers, we have a lot of teachers in our community, and especially the subs. So the teachers that have an actual contract still get paid. But the ones who are subbing, you just sub day by day. So as soon as schools are shut down, they're on their own. When it comes to exporting stuff, exporting like barley or canola to China or like other places like that. So now with everything going on, what if that might impact actually our export to other countries? Because people don't know, the handling of these products and everything. And what if there's like a whole fear was, oh, because you're handling this, maybe someone who was infected was handling it. So would that impact the farmers? So that's one of the things that people have been talking about right now in our community is, what if this is going to impact our export and nobody's want to buy anything because we're so afraid to have it need back into our country?
We have very few people that still work that are members of our church. Most of them are probably in the healthcare, so they will be busy providing their services. Most of them are seniors on pensions. And I think someone else had added the comment that, they will give perhaps more sparingly now because their children would obviously probably come first. Perhaps they will, they've got hearts. So the homeless and the people that are going to the food banks will need assistance at this time, especially. So I can see where our givings will go down.
Well, I've been talking with my congregation for a while about either setting up a system of pre-authorized remittance or making us available for e-transfers or things like that. But people have been very resistant to it. Everybody, tends to like the traditional method of either mailing in their check to the church or putting it themselves into the offering plate. And we've had the conversation many times, but it's never been implemented. Now, this is kind of almost, I wouldn't say caught us unawares, but we're in a situation where we can no longer pass that plate from person to person and meet together in a physical building. So especially when we are not going to be able to have Holy Week and Easter services, that's one of the points in time when we really have a larger income in the congregation. That giving will dip after Christmas. It kind of rises a bit at Easter to get us through the summer. And then when people have the majority of their income during harvest, it starts to climb up again, and about 30 to 40% of our yearly income comes in during the month of December. So one of the first conversations we had after deciding we would shut down the church building for the time being was a conversation about potential temporary layoff for me, just in the sense of trying to preserve something to have for me to have a job to come back to. And I'm really hoping that that doesn't take place because of the fact that I can clearly see that there is work to be done here, even in the time when we're not having physical worship services. People are in need, they're looking for answers. When I phone people, I'm connecting them with them in different ways. But definitely the need for pastoral care is still there.
I think we're okay. Like right now, it's our first 2 weeks going into our third here. Almost our third one is almost done, finishing up here. I think pastoral care is really critical. It's the pastor isn't doing what she might normally look like we're doing, but more phone calls, more talking, more interchange in a different way. And, like we're not a business model, which is always the challenge for most people, is churches are not a business model. We are a different type of service, and that's where the tithing comes in, and that's where the generosity comes in. It's not a business transaction, and that's can be a struggle in the minds of many.